Hello everybody, Dragon47 here. How is it going with you guys today? So I am actually recording my first set in the league at the current moment. The team I will be using is Medicham Lickitung Diggersby, mainly because I wanted to showcase Medicham and why it holds the #1 spot in the Great League. Lickitung also being really good, and I wanted to try out that new Scorching Sands Diggersby. I am terribly sorry for the lag throughout the video, and I will continue to work on that in the future. But without further ado, let's dive straight on into the battles. My first opponent will be, I will lead Medicham, and they will lead Nidoqueen. So we will start going in with the fast attacks, trying to get as much energy as we can. 2, 3, 4. And then they throw in Frostless. In response, we throw in Lickitung. We're going to try and use Lickitung because with Lick, it's super effective damage as a Ghost on Ghost type. We're going to eat the Avalanche here because they're not going to throw Shadow Ball. That'd be non-effective. We continue farming down for more and more of that sweet, sweet energy. We actually shield here because I need to make sure that this thing dies because both of our mons are kind of weak to it, right? So I throw the body slam at a shielder just to get some chip damage on it to get it nice and low. My opponent eats the hit. I lick down, and I hit him with another body slam to get even more chip damage on him. And this is exactly what we need to try and make sure that our team survives. Now my opponent is going to throw another Avalanche at us. That's okay. I'm going to let the Lickitung go, and I'm going to get that farm down with Medi, knocking out the Frostless. In comes the Nidoqueen, and I attempt to throw an Ice Punch, but they swap into Greninja to try and catch the move. Now, little does my opponent know, I actually want this matchup because Diggersby can take down Nidoqueen. By them swapping into Greninja, they've given me the switch advantage. So I continue to sit in and I keep Ice Punching Greninja over and over again just to try and get some of that fast move down. Now I do actually shield this thinking it was a Hydro Cannon, but my opponent baited me into thinking that it was a Night Slash, and that's actually huge because now I was down a shield. I make an attempted catch on the Nidoqueen move, and I managed to succeed on Diggersby. Earth Power does hurt, but since Diggersby is super duper bulky, it's not going to affect him. And with every Scorching Sands that I throw, they have to shield here, otherwise they're going to lose out on their Nidoqueen. This is the exact position you want to be in, mainly because with Greninja out of the way, that poses no real threat to Diggersby. They throw another defense. Our defense does fall because of that Poison Fang, but that's okay because we get to throw another Scorching Sands and force them to use both their shields, which is huge. We may lose Diggersby here. Yep, that's totally fine. But we will be able to come in with Medicham, and since we had so much energy on it earlier, we'll be able to throw that Ice Punch and punch it down for game. GG to my opponent. Let's move on into the next battle. I actually do remember this one, and I lost this one, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's okay. You know, you win some, you lose some. Sometimes you just lose because you got a hard matchup, and my hard matchup for this team was Tropius. And we're going to go with the sweet, sweet farm down, counter. Going to try and hit him with that Ice Punch for double super effective, trying to get at least a shield here if possible. I do manage to get the shield. I then swap in a Lickitung to try and tank some of this damage. I know Leaf Blade's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt way less on my Lickitung as opposed to anything else. We eat that damage, and we manage to get our hands on a body slam, and I turn around and try to use this body slam to try and get some good chip damage on that Tropius, which I do. I manage to lick. Unfortunately, I decide to let the Lickitung go. The Leaf Blade is going to kill me, and so is the Tropius. That's okay, though. I'll come back in with Medicham to try and farm down the Tropius a little bit, and I try to throw an Ice Punch, but my opponent catches on a Wigglytuff, which is super duper unfortunate for me. I lose out on a lot of energy, and I lose out on keeping Medicham out, so I'm forced to swap into Diggersby. Now, the good thing about Diggersby is that with Diggersby, I'm going to be able to debuff a lot of the damage that Wigglytuff currently has on it, thanks to Scorching Sands. Yep, there it was. And I managed to get the first shield, and now that my opponent has no shields, all of my attacks are just going to go through no matter what. So the first thing I do is I go for the Scorching Sands and attempt to weaken it even further. I maybe should have gone for the Hyper Beam. That was kind of a misplay by me, but then I would have been Energy Drive for the next month, so it was kind of a lose-lose situation. I thought that I could farm up. I use a shield here to try and take it out, but I couldn't. And my opponent makes yet another amazingly good catch, and I throw a Scorching Sand straight into a Tropius. I do manage to make that attack lower, but there's no point in keeping my Diggersby up. I'd rather him waste the energy on killing my Diggersby. I throw the Medicham back in and try to farm down. I do manage to succeed taking down the Tropius, but the Wigglytuff is going to come in and hit me with that Charm super effective damage, and that will KO. GG, well played to my opponent. let's head on into the next battle. And we start off with our Medicham lead, and they start with a Doug trio. Now this is kind of a weird one. I managed to go in and counter, 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 counter. I don't think my opponent realizes that with counter it's super effective on steel. Again, this is lower league play, so you can't expect too much. I plan on climbing as high and as soon as I can to try and get some better content out to you guys. So they throw him in a gloom. I managed to get my hands on an ice punch. I throw the ice punch. I actually throw it back to back, and they actually do shield both of them, because if they didn't, it would be double super effective damage to that gloom. So I counter, 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 counter. Then I go for the psychic, and this will be more than enough to KO my opponent's Pokemon. Then in comes the Combustion. Now this Pokemon I actually have to worry about because it was dealing super effective damage to my Medicham, but that's okay. I'm able to swap into my Diggersby, get my hands on a Scorching Sands, and I will KO this opponent for game. GG to my opponent. And it's okay, you know? Sometimes losing is the best way of learning. And I learned the hard way because I used to lose a lot all the time before I decided to learn what the meta was and decided to learn from my past mistakes. Into our next battle. Now, this battle was actually crazy. I love this battle. Probably one of my highlights of the entire season. We lead into a bad matchup. I do feel kind of bad because they weren't there for the few seconds. I immediately swap into Lickitung to start doing that super effective damage, and they start throwing in a Poliwrath. I go in right on ahead and start throwing that Power Whip. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have thrown the Body Slam as bait to save energy first, but that's okay. I managed to get the shield out of the way anyway. My opponent is going to hit me with an attack. I make the mistake of shielding here, but that's okay. I lick down. I managed to get my hands on a Body Slam. I spin around and try to hit him with that Body Slam for that juicy chip damage, and I managed to get the shield. They thought it was a Power Whip, but I did not throw a Power Whip at all. I can then go safely into Medicham and just beat him down, because although Medicham is going to take a hit from the Scald here, which I was completely unaware that he had, I do shield this attack thinking it was another Scald. He succeeded in baiting me. When he uses counter, it's not effective on Medicham because he's a psychic fighting. So having that resistance against the fighting attacks makes it very helpful. We throw an ice punch and get that extra punch in for that extra farm, for that extra energy, which is going to be crucial here in a moment, and you guys will see why. They throw in the Frostless, and I immediately throw in Diggersby. Now I know Diggersby technically loses this matchup because Diggersby in a Frostless is actually really, really bad for me. So I farm, and I try to go for the Hyper Beam to try and KO, but they swap into Lantern, which is exactly what I actually needed without me even knowing. I Hyper Beam the Lantern, get full maximum damage, but thanks to that Spark nerf, he's not able to get to that Surf in time. I managed to get my hands on a Scorching Sand, and I managed to KO the Lantern. I get some chip damage on that Frostless, and I immediately turn around and use Psychic on Medicham to knock it out of the game. Medicham ain't going nowhere with that nerf. It is the strongest mon in the game, hands down, and personally, I'd rather have Medicham be here than the Noctowl Lantern core that we had previously before. I think that Medicham has more answers than, some of the other mons, and the Psychic nerf definitely did help restrain it, but it made it more balanced anyway. So here we go with the Medicham into the Kanto Ninetales, a super spicy pick by my opponent. I start going with a counter, and I swap into the Diggersby to start doing some of that super effective damage, storing the energy on that Medicham for later, and my opponent is going to go ahead and throw. It's going to be a Heat Wave. It's going to deal some decent damage, but Diggersby can tank it because he is bulky. In comes that Snorlax, and I'll immediately go for the Scorching Sands to try and get a debuff on it. They shield. I do not get the debuff. Super unfortunate. That's okay. I'm going to go for the Hyper Beam. I probably could have gone for the Scorching Sands to try and debuff Snorlax anyways, but oh well. I threw the Hyper Beam and I managed to get the second shield. My opponent's going to attack, and I'm going to let the Diggersby go. And out of the door he goes, so I can go into my Medicham and start getting that super effective counter down damage. I then continue to throw an Ice Punch to deal some decent damage to the opponent. I farm away. I do manage to shield this because I want to keep my Medicham nice and healthy with all of its energy, so I can really wail on the next Pokemon he brings in. And in comes I swap to Lickitung. In comes Alolan Ninetales, so I can start getting energy on that Lick. And I know it has a heat wave, so I'm just going to try and bank on the fact that it's heat wave, and it was, and I managed to lick down to get all that extra energy, which is huge for me. My opponent throws in a Latias, and you don't want to use a Latias against Lickitung because he has Ghost Lick super effective damage on that Psychic Dragon type. I'm able to get the double body slam back to back thanks to the energy I got earlier, and thanks to Lickitung's amazing bulk. I do end up losing him, but that's okay because I have an Ice Punch charged on my Medicham. This is why it was super important, because now I can tap out that Latias, and when Snorlax comes right back into battle, I can hit him with the second Ice Punch to knock him out for game. Very well played to my opponent. GG's all around to all my opponents. I can't wait to start playing in the higher leagues and to see what's going to happen the further I go up. I want to see what the team comps are going to look like. I want to see the things that I've experimented with. And I have another team that I've decided to change out after this one in the works because this one to me was starting to struggle a little bit. It is a strong team, but I thought that there were better options, and I did manage to find one. And I can't wait to showcase you guys that one here in the very, very near future. As always, thank you for watching the videos. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.